The preface of Marsilio Ficino, the Florentine, to his first book of letters, addressed to the magnanimous Giuliano de Medici. Marsilio Ficino to the magnanimous Giuliano de Medici. Greetings. Magnanimous Giuliano, the great Cosimo, your grandfather and my patron, often spoke these words of Plato, that in undertaking important affairs, nothing is more profitable than the goodwill of prudent and learned men. And there is no clearer evidence of justice and prudence in such affairs than if friends of this kind are present, nor of injustice and imprudence than if they are absent. This is the golden rule of Plato. Cosimo, throughout the whole of his life, proved it by what he did, much more than by what he said. He was certainly an exceptionally wealthy man, rich in money, far richer in men, and most rich in prudence and justice. And what is most rare and wonderful, he left a son and grandchildren who inherit this treasure. So it is that in my Giuliano I recognize that old man on whom alone, after God, my welfare totally depended. There is, therefore, nobody whom I desire to be in better health than Giuliano, and indeed I pray on beseech God for this every day, and to declare to you more clearly my desire and intent, I have resolved that the first volume of my letters to my friends should be dedicated to you, who are the prince among them. I have done this in order that all my friends may be related to one principal friend, and so that when you are reading them, each time you read the greeting, you will know that Marsilio greets Giuliano. Letter 1. On the Desire of Happiness. Cosimo de Medici to Marsilio Ficino. Greetings. Yesterday I went to my estate at Carigi, but for the sake of cultivating my mind and not my estate. Come to us, Marsilio, as soon as possible. Bring with you Plato's book on the highest good, which I suppose you have translated from Greek into Latin as you promised. I want nothing more wholeheartedly than to know which way leads most surely to happiness. Farewell. Come and bring your Orphic lyre with you. Letter 2. The Way to Happiness. Marsilio Ficino to Cosimo de Medici. Greetings. I shall come to you as quickly as I can, most willingly. What could be pleasanter than to be in Carigi, the land of the Graces, talking with Cosimo, the father of the Graces? Meanwhile, please accept in these few words what the Platonists say about the most convenient way to happiness. Although I do not think it is necessary to show the way to a man who has already nearly achieved the goal, I think your desire must be obeyed, in your absence as well as your presence. All men want to act well, which is to live well, but they live well if they are endowed with as many good things as possible. Now, these good things are said to be riches, health, beauty, strength, nobility of birth, honors, power, prudence, as well as justice, fortitude, and temperance, and above all else wisdom, which indeed comprehends the whole essence of happiness. For happiness consists in the successful achievement of the desired goal, but wisdom does this for every activity. Thus skilled flautists get the best of their instruments, and learned grammarians best understood what relates to reading and writing. Wise helmsmen also reach a good harbor in their voyage before others do, and the wise general conducts warfare with the least danger. The wise doctor can best restore the body's health. Thus, with all her strength, wisdom gives us mastery of every human activity according to our desire. She never wavers, nor is she ever led astray. Otherwise, in truth, she would not be wisdom. Since wisdom is the cause of attaining the goal, necessarily she is all-powerful where happiness is concerned. It is also said that only they are happy who are endowed with as many gifts, but they are not happy before those gifts benefit them, and they not contribute to happiness, and they never benefit from them unless they use them. Possession without use does not contribute to happiness, nor is use alone enough, for one can use them badly, and thus be injured rather than helped. So as we have added use possession, we must add rightfulness to use. For we must not only use our gifts, but we must use them rightly. Wisdom alone ensures that we do so. This one can see in the arts, in which only those who are skilled in their art make right of their useful materials, no less than they do of their tools. So also, wisdom makes sure that we rightly use riches, health, beauty, strength, and the other things which are called good. For this reason, knowledge is the cause of good and successful action in the possession, use, and working of every gift. The man who possesses many gifts and uses them without intelligence is injured the more he possesses, since he has more to misuse. Certainly, the less someone does who is ignorant, the fewer mistakes does he make. The fewer mistakes he makes, the less is the harm he does. The less harm he does, the less miserable he is. Certainly, he does less if he is poor than if he is rich, if he is weak than if he is strong, if he is timid rather than bold, if he is sluggish rather than alert, slow rather than quick, dull rather than clever. Thus, none of those qualities which above were called good are good in themselves. For if they are dominated by ignorance, they are worse than their opposites, insofar as they can plentifully supply the means of crime to an evil leader. If, on the other hand, prudence and wisdom govern these qualities, then they are so much the better. Thus, they are not good or bad in themselves. To the wise man, both advantages of difficulties become useful, because he makes good use of them both. But the opposite applies to the ignorant. Of everything that is ours, wisdom alone is good in itself. Only ignorance is bad in itself. Since, therefore, we all wish to be happy, and happiness cannot be obtained without the rightful use of our gifts, and since knowledge reveals their proper use, we should leave all else aside and strive with the full support of philosophy and religion to become as wise as possible. For thus our soul becomes most like to God, who is wisdom itself. In this likeness, according to Plato, consists the highest state of happiness. Letter 3. Imitation is more useful than reading. Marsilio Ficino, to the noble Amerigo Benci. Greetings. Today I received from you the dialogues of our Plato in Greek. Certainly a magnificent gift worthy of your spirit and most pleasing to mine. I send you many thanks. May the heavenly graces soon visit you with their immortal favor. You wished, I think, to imitate the great Cosimo in this as in most other things, for in early days he enriched my library with Plato's works in Greek. I praise your gift, Amerigo, and approve the imitation, for imitation is a surer way to virtue than reading. Just as harmony has a more powerful effect when actually flowing into our ears than when subsequently recollected. And as a battle stirs us more deeply when watched than when being recounted, so the illustrious deeds of living heroes rouse us more ardently to the pursuit of virtue and fashion us more perfectly for it than do the words of the ancient philosophers discussing moral conduct. A theological dialogue between God and the soul. Marsilio Ficino to Michele Mercati of San Miniato, his beloved fellow philosopher. Greetings. We have often talked together of moral and natural philosophy, beloved Michele, and even more often of divine philosophy. I remember you used to say again and again that morals are developed through practice, natural things discovered by reason, and the divine begged of God by prayer. I have also read in the works of our Plato that the divine is revealed through purity of living rather than thought by verbal instruction. When I was seriously considered these things, I sometimes began to feel sick at heart, for I had already come to distrust reason, but still lacked faith in revelation. From this there arose an intimate conversation between the soul and God. Listen to this, if you please, although I think you may already be nearer to speaking with God than I. Now this is a dialogue between God and the soul. First to speak, God. God, why do you grieve so much, my unhappy soul? O my daughter, weep no more. Behold, I, your father, am here with you. I am here, your cure and your salvation. The soul. Oh, that my father would enter into me, if I believe such a grace could befall me. Ah! I should go mad with joy. As it is, I do not see how that could come about. For if, as I thought, the Creator of the world created me, his offspring, nearer to himself than his own created world, he who is only outside me is not my highest Father, nor could he who was only within me be my Father, for my Father is certainly greater than I. Yet he who is contained in me must be smaller. But I do not know how anything can be both inside me and outside me at the same time. What sorely distressed me, stranger, whoever you may be, is this, that I do not wish to live without my Father, yet despair of being able to find him. God, put an end to your tears, my daughter, and do not torment yourself. It is no stranger who speaks to you, but one who is your very own, more familiar to you than you are to yourself. Indeed, I am both with you and within you. I am indeed with you, because I am in you. I am in you, because you are in me. If you were not in me, would not be yourself. Indeed, you would not be at all. Dry those tears, my daughter, and look upon your father. Your father is the least of all things in size, just as he is the greatest of all things in excellence. And since he is very small, he is within everything. But since he is very great, he is outside everything. See, I am here with you, both within and without, the greatest smallness and the smallest greatness. Behold, I say, do you not see? I fill heaven and earth. I penetrate and contain them. I fill and am not filled, for I am fullness itself. I penetrate and am not penetrated, for I am the power of penetration itself. I contain and am not contained, for I am containing itself. I, who am fullness itself, am not filled, for that would be worthy of me. I am not penetrated lest I cease to exist, being myself existence. I am not constrained lest I cease to be God, who am infinity itself. Behold, do you not see? I pass into everything unmingled, so that I may surpass all, for I am excellence itself. I excel everything without being separate, so that I am also able to enter and permeate at the same time, to enter completely and to make one, being unity itself, through which all things are made and endure, and which all things seek. Why do you despair of finding your Father, O foolish one? It is not difficult to find the place where I am, for in me are all things, out of me come all things, and by me are all things sustained forever and everywhere. And within infinite power I expand through infinite space. Indeed, no place can be found where I am not. This very where surely exists through me and is called everywhere. Whatever anyone does anywhere, he does through my guidance and my light. Whatever anyone seeks anywhere, he seeks through my guidance and my light. There is no desiring anywhere except for the good. There is no finding anywhere except for the truth. I am all good. I am all truth. Seek my face and you shall live. But do not move in order to touch me, for I am stillness itself. Do not be drawn in any directions in order to take hold of me. I am unity itself. Stop the movement, unify diversity, and you will surely reach me, who long ago reached you. Soul, how quickly you leave me, O my comforter! Why do you so suddenly leave your daughter thirsting like this? Go on, say more, continue, I beg you. Venerably deity, by your divine majesty, if it please you, I pray to speak more plainly. Oh, may it please you, and because I know it will, tell me more plainly than what you, who are my Father, are not, that I may be restored to life. And, O my Father, tell me again what you are, so that I may live. God, your Father is not of a physical nature, my daughter. The more you obey your Father, the better you are, and the more you resist the body, the finer you are. It is good for you to be with your Father, bad for you to be with your body. It was not some mind that fathered you, O soul. Otherwise, you would contemplate nothing beyond mind, and you would be held in that same changing mind, and not seek in unchanging nature. It was no intellect of many parts that made you, for then you would not attain complete simplicity, and the possession of intellect itself would be sufficient for you. But as it is, you ascend by understanding and love beyond any kind of intellect to life itself, pure existence, absolute being. And understanding is not sufficient for you unless you not only understand well, but understand good itself. Without doubt, only the good itself is sufficient for you. For the only reason you seek anything is because it is good. Therefore, O soul, good is your creator. Not the good body, not the good mind, not the good intellect, but good itself. Good is that which is indeed self-sufficient, infinite beyond the limits of what is beneath it, and it bestows on you infinite life, either from age to age, or at least from some beginning to the end of time. Do you desire to look on the face of good? Then look around at the whole universe, full of the light of the sun. Look at the light in the material world, full of all forms in constant movement. Take away the matter, leave the rest. You have the soul, an incorporeal light that takes all shapes and is full of change. Once again, take from this the changeability, and now you have reached the intelligence of the angels, the incorporeal light taking all shapes but unchanging. Take away from this that diversity by which any form differs from the light, and which is infused into the light from elsewhere. And then the essence of the light and each form is the same. The light gives form to itself, and through its own forms gives form to everything. That light lights without limit, because it lights by its own nature, and is not stained by the mixture of something else. Nor can it diminish. Belonging to nothing, it shines equally through all. Its life is self-dependent. It confers life on all, seeing that its very shadow is the light of the sun. It alone gives life to the incorporeal. It perceives everything and bestows perception, since its shadow awakens all the senses for all creatures. Finally, it loves each single thing, for each single thing is especially its own. What then is the light of the sun? It is the shadow of God. So what is God? God is the sun of the sun. The light of the sun is God in the physical world, and God is the light of the sun above the intelligence of the angels. My shadow is such, O soul, that it is the most beautiful of all physical things. What do you suppose is the nature of my light? If this is the glory of my shadow, how much greater is the glory of my light? Do you love the light everywhere above all else? Indeed, do you love the light alone? Love only me, O soul, alone, the infinite light. Love me, the light, boundlessly, I say. Then you will shine and be infinitely delighted. Soul. O wonder, surpassing, wonderful itself! What strange fire consumes me now? What new sun is this, and whence does it shine upon me? What is this spirit so powerful and sweet, which at this moment pierces and soothes my inmost heart? Whence does it come? It bites and licks, goads and tickles. What bitter sweetness is this? Who could think it? This bitter sweetness melts me through and disembowels me. After this, even the sweetest things seem bitter to me. What sweet bitterness it is which joins together my torn fragments, making me one again, by which even the most bitter is made sweet to me. How irresistible is this will! I cannot but desire the good itself. I may avoid or postpone anything else, but not this longing for the good. How freely chosen is this necessity! For if I want to avoid it, I shall try to do so only because I think the avoidance itself is good. Nothing is more freely chosen than good, because of it I desire all things. No, rather, it is good which I desire in all things everywhere, and desire in such a way that I do not even wish to be capable of desiring, or not desiring it. What would think it? Who would think it? How full of life is that death by which I die in myself but live in God, by which I die to the dead but live for life, and live for life and rejoice in joy? O pleasure beyond sense, O delight beyond mind, O joy beyond understanding! I am now out of my mind, but not mindless, because I am beyond mind. Again, I am in a frenzy, all too great a frenzy, yet I do not fall to the ground. I am borne again, upward. Now I expand in every direction and overflow, but am not dispersed, because God, the unity unites, brings me to myself, because he makes me live with himself. Therefore, now rejoice with me, all you who, rejoicing, is God. My God has come to me. The God of the universe has embraced me. The God of gods even now enters my inmost being. Now indeed, God himself nourishes me wholly, and he who created me recreates me. He who brought forth the soul transforms it into angel, turns it into God. How shall I give thanks to you, O grace of graces? Teach me yourself, O grace of graces. I pray you teach me and be my guide. May that grace be with you, which is your very self, O God. Medicine heals the body, music the spirit, and theology the soul. Marsilio Ficino to Francesco Musano of Aisi. Greetings. As soon as you were cured of your wrongly diagnosed tertian fever by our medicines, both you and Giovanni Aurelio paid your respects to our academy as if it were your own doctor. Then you asked for and heard the sound of the lyre and the singing of the hymns. Since then you have gleaned a great deal from our theology. Do not be surprised, Francesco, that we combine medicine and the lyre with the study of theology. Since you are dedicated to philosophy, you must remember that within us, nature has bonded body and spirit with the soul. The body is indeed healed by the remedies of medicine, but spirit, which is the airy vapor of our blood, is the link between the body and the soul, is tempered and nourished by airy smells, by sounds, and by song. Finally, the soul, as it is divine, is purified by the divine mysteries of theology. In nature, a union is made from soul, body, and spirit. To the Egyptian priests, medicine, music, and the mysteries were one and the same study. Would that we consider master this natural and Egyptian art as successfully as we tenaciously and wholeheartedly apply ourselves to it. But enough of these things for the present. You asked me yesterday to transcribe for you that maxim of mine which is inscribed around the walls of the Academy. Receive it. All things are directed from goodness to goodness. Rejoice in the present. Set no value on property. Seek no honors. Avoid excess. Avoid activity. Rejoice in the present. Farewell. Letter 6. Law and Justice. Marsilio Ficino to Otto Niccolini and Benedetto di Arezzo, lawyers, and Piero Pazzi and Bernardo Giunghi, knights. Greetings. You persuaded me to render the laws of Plato from Greek into Latin, and the great Cosimo also encouraged me to do the same work. This I have already done, and all the more willingly because I considered the state to need the best lawyers more than good merchants or doctors. In the same degree as Minos benefited the Greeks more than Galen did, so is the soul superior to the body or the spirit, and eternal life of the temporal. Indeed, commerce appears to be the body of the state, medicine the spirit, and law the soul. Yet, although there appear to be many laws in the state, there are not many souls. For just as many skills and many levels of citizen do not make many states, but only if he moves towards the same goal and according to similar principles. So there may be many magistrates' regulations in a city, yet there is but one public law. This is the common rule of living justly, which leads to public happiness. God and nature prepare us for this law. Regulations guide us towards it, and God alone finally makes us conform to it. For from the divine law spring both the law of the stars and the law of men. For this reason, all lawgivers have partly, like Apis, copied Moses, the truest author of divine laws. Partly compelled by truth, I know not how, they have affirmed that they received the laws from God in various guises. Osiris, the giver of laws to the Egyptians, from Mercurius. Zoroaster, from a good spirit. Zamaxis, of the Scythians, from Vesta. Minos of Crete, and Solon of Athens, from Jove. Lycurgus of Sparta, from Apollo. Numa, king of the Romans, from the nymph Igaria. Mohammed, king of the Arabs, from the angel Gabriel. Our own Plato took the framework for his books on law from God, whom he declared to be the universal author of all laws. This he also confirmed in the dialogue entitled Protagoras, saying that those skills which relate to sustaining life were handed down to us by Prometheus, that is, human providence. But the law of living well and happily was granted by Jove, that is, by divine providence, through Mercury, which is an angelic inspiration. My good friends, I cannot but admire the power of the law, for the order and harmony of law are necessary in the elements of the universe, the humors of a living being, the life of beasts, and also a den of thieves. Even these men cannot live together without some just order. But what shall we say about this? That although among lower beings there may be no other virtue, yet even here law and justice are not lacking, which punish the wicked according to their deserts? And although among the blessed those moral virtues are no longer necessary which in mortals contribute to calming the agitation of body and senses, from which those who enjoy the blessed life are already free, yet law and justice flourish among them, endowing each with the eternal rewards according to his merit, and protecting the blessed. Farewell, fortunate men. Letter 7. On Divine Frenzy. Marsilio Ficino to Peregrino Agli. Greetings. On November 29th, my father, Ficino the doctor brought me to Figlini 2 letters from you, one in verse and the other in prose. Having read these, I heartily congratulate our age for producing a young man whose name and fame may render it illustrious. Indeed, my dearest Peregrino, when I consider your age and those things which come from you every day, I not only rejoice but much marvel at such gifts in a friend. I do not know which of the ancients whose memory we respect, not to mention men of our own time, achieved so much at your age. This I ascribe not just to study and technique, but much more to divine frenzy. Without this, say Democritus and Plato, no man has ever been great. The powerful emotion and burning desire which your writings express prove, as I have said, that you are inspired and inwardly possessed by that frenzy, and this power, which is manifested in external movements, the ancient philosophers maintained was the most potent proof that the divine force dwelt in our souls. But since I have mentioned this frenzy, I shall relate the opinion of our Plato about in a few words, with a brevity which a letter demands, so that you may easily understand what it is, how many kinds of it there are, and which God is responsible for each. I am sure that this description will not only please you, but also be one of the very greatest used by you. Plato considers, as Pythagoras, Empedocles, and Heraclitus maintained earlier, that our soul, before it descended into our bodies, dwelt in the abodes of heaven, where, as Socrates says in the Phaedrus, it was nourished and rejoiced in the contemplation of truth. Those philosophers I have just mentioned had learnt from Mercurius Trismegistus, the wisest of all Egyptians, that God is the supreme source of light, within whom shine the models of all things, which they call ideas. Thus, they believed, it followed that the soul, in steadfastly contemplating the eternal mind of God, also beholds with greater clarity the natures of all things. So, according to Plato, the soul saw justice itself, wisdom, harmony, and the marvelous beauty of the divine nature. And sometimes he calls all these natures ideas, sometimes divine essences, and sometimes first natures which exist in the eternal mind of God. The minds of men, while they are there, are well nourished with perfect knowledge. But souls are depressed into our bodies through thinking about and desiring earthly things. Then those who were previously fed on ambrosia and nectar, that is the perfect knowledge and bliss of God, in their descent are said to drink continuously of the river Lethe, that is forgetfulness of the divine. They do not fly back to heaven, whence they fell by weight of their earthly thoughts, until they began to contemplate once more those divine natures which they have forgotten. The divine philosopher considers we achieve this through 2 virtues, one relating to moral conduct and the other to contemplation, for he names with a common term justice and the other wisdom. For this reason, he says, souls fly back to heaven on 2 wings, meaning, as I understand it, these virtues. And likewise, Socrates teaches in Phaedo that we acquire these, the 2 parts of philosophy, namely, the active and contemplative. Hence, he says again in Phaedrus, that only the mind of a philosopher regains wings. On recovery of these wings, the soul is separated from the body by their power. Filled with God, it strives with all its might to reach the heavens, and thither it's drawn. Plato calls this drawing away and striving divine frenzy, and he divides it into 4 parts. He thinks that men never remember the divine unless they are stirred by its shadows or images, as they may be described, which are perceived by all the bodily senses. Paul and Dionysius, the wisest of Christian theologians, affirm the invisible things that are of God and understood from what he has made and what is to be seen here. But Plato says that the wisdom of men is the image of divine wisdom. He thinks that the harmony which we make with musical instruments and voices is the image of the divine harmony, and that the symmetry and comeliness that arise from the perfect union of the parts and its members are the body of the image of the divine beauty. Since wisdom is present in no man, or at any rate in very few, and cannot be perceived by bodily sense, it follows that images of divine wisdom are very rare amongst us, hidden from our senses and totally ignored. Because of this, Socrates says in Phaedrus that the image of wisdom may not be seen at all by the eyes, because if it were, it would deeply arouse that marvelous love of the divine wisdom of which it is an image. But we do indeed perceive the reflection of divine beauty with our eyes and mark the resonance of divine harmony with our ears. Thus, those bodily senses which Plato considers the most perceptive of all. Thus, when the soul has received, through the physical senses, those images which are within material objects, we remember what we knew before when we existed outside the prison of the body. The soul is fired by this memory and, shaking its wings, by degrees purges itself from contact with its body, and its filth becomes wholly possessed by the divine frenzy. From the 2 senses I have just mentioned, 2 kinds of frenzy are aroused: regaining the memory and true of the divine beauty and appearance of beauty that eyes perceive. We desire the former with a secret and unutterable ardor of the mind. This Plato calls divine love, which he defines as the desire to return again to the contemplation of the divine beauty, a desire arising from sight of its physical likeness. Moreover, it is necessary for him who is so moved not only to desire that supernal beauty, but also holy delight in its appearance, which is revealed to his eyes. For nature has so ordained that he who seeks anything should also delight in its image. But Plato holds in the mark of a dull mind and corrupt state if a man desires no more than the shadows of that beauty, nor looks for anything beyond the form his eyes can see. For he believes that such a man is afflicted with the kind of love that is for the companion of wantonness and lust, and he defines as irrational and heedless the love of the pleasure in the physical form, which is enjoyed by all the senses. Elsewhere, he describes this love as the ardent desire of the soul, which in way is dead in its own body, while alive in another. He then says that the soul of a lover leads its life into another body. This the Epicureans follow when they say that love is a union of small particles, which they call atoms, made to penetrate the person from whom images of beauty have been taken. Plato says that this kind of love is born of human sickness and is full of trouble and anxiety, and that it arises in those men whose mind is so covered over with darkness that it dwells on nothing exalted, nothing outstanding, nothing beyond the weak and transient image of this little body. It does not look up to the heavens, for it is in black prison. It is shuttered by night. But when those whose spirit is drawn away and freed from the clay of the body first seen form and grace in anyone, they rejoice, as at the reflection of the divine beauty, which they should honor and desire above all, as it is by burning desire for this beauty that they may be drawn to the heavens. This first attempt at flight Plato calls divine ecstasy and frenzy. I have already written enough about that frenzy, which, I have said, arises through the eyes. But the soul receives the sweetest harmonies and the numbers through the ears, and by these echoes is reminded and aroused to the divine music which may be heard by the more subtle and penetrating sense of mind. According to the followers of Plato, divine music is twofold. One kind, they say, exists entirely in the eternal mind of God. The second is in their emotions and orders of the heavens, by which the heavenly spheres and their orbits make marvelous harmony. In both of these our soul took part before it was imprisoned in our body. But it uses the ears as messengers, as though they were chinks in this darkness. By the ears, as I have already said, the soul receives the echoes of that incomparable music, by which is led back to the deep and silent memory of the harmony which it previously enjoyed. The soul then kindles with desire to fly back to its rightful home, so it may rejoice with that true music again. It realizes that as long as it is enclosed in the dark abode of its body, can in no way reach that music. It therefore strives wholeheartedly to imitate it, because it cannot here enjoy its possession. Now, with men this imitation is twofold. Some imitate the celestial music by harmony of voice and the sounds of various instruments, by these superficial and vulgar musicians. But some, who imitate the divine and heavenly harmony with deeper and sounder judgment, render a sense of its inner reason and knowledge into verse, feet, and numbers. It is these who, inspired by the divine spirit, give forth the full voice of the most solemn and glorious song. Plato calls this solemn music and poetry the most effective imitation of celestial harmony. For the more superficial kind which I have just mentioned does no more than soothe with the sweetness of voice, but poetry does what is also proper to divine harmony. It expresses with fire the most profound and, as a poet would say, prophetic meaning in the numbers of voice and movement. Thus not only does it delight the ear, but it brings to the mind the finest nourishment, most like food of the gods, and so seems to come very close to God. In Plato's view, this poetic frenzy springs from the muses, but he considers both the man and his poetry worthless who approaches the doors of poetry without the call of the muses, in the hope that we will become a good poet by technique. He thinks that those poets who are possessed by divine inspiration and power often utter such supreme words that, when inspired by the muses, that afterwards, when the rapture has left them, they themselves scarcely understand what they too have uttered. And, as I believe, the divine Plato considers that the muses should be understood as divine songs. Thus they say melody and muse take their name from song. Hence, divine men are inspired by divine beings and song to imitate them by employing the modes and meters of poetry. When Plato deals with the motion of the spheres in the Republic, he says that one siren established within each orbit, meaning, as one Plotinus says, that by movement of the spheres song is offered to the gods. For siren rightly means in Greek singing in honor of God. And the ancient theologians maintained that the 9 muses were the musical songs of the 8 spheres, and in addition, the one great harmony arising from all the others. Therefore, poetry springs from divine frenzy, frenzy from the muses, and the muses from Jove. The followers of Plato repeatedly call the soul of the whole universe Jove, who inwardly nourishes heaven and earth, and the moving seas, the moon's shining orb, the stars, and the sun. Permeating every limb, he moves the whole mass and mingles with its vast substance. It is thus that the heavenly spheres are set in motion and governed by Jove, the spirit and mind of the whole universe, and that from him also arise the musical songs of these spheres, which are called the muses. As that illustrious Plotinus says, Jove is the origin of the muses. All things are full of Jove, and that spirit which is called Jove is everywhere. He enlivens and refills all things, and Alexander Milesius, the Pythagorean, says, touch the heavens as though they were a lyre. He creates this celestial harmony. The divine prophet Orpheus says, Jove is first, Jove is last, Jove is head, Jove is the center. The universe is born of Jove. Jove is the foundation of the earth and of the star-bearing heavens. Jove appears as man, yet he is the spotless bride. Jove is the breath and form of all things. Jove is the source of the ocean. Jove is the movement in the underlying fire. Jove is the sun and the moon. Jove, the king and prince of all. Hiding his light, he has shed it afresh from his blissful heart, manifesting his purpose. We may understand from this that all bodies are full of Jove. He contains and nourishes them, so that truly it is said that whatever you see and wherever you move is Jove. After these, the following kinds of divine frenzy, which Plato considers are twofold. One is centered in the mysteries, and the other, which he calls prophecy, concerns future events. The first, he says, is a powerful stirring of the soul, in perfecting what relates to the worship of the gods, religious observance, purification, and divine sacred ceremonies. But the tendencies of mind which falsely imitates that frenzy he calls superstition. He considers that the last kind of frenzy, in which he includes prophecy, to be nothing other than knowledge inspired by the divine spirit, which we properly call divination and prophecy. If the soul is fired in the act of the divination, he calls it frenzy. That is, when the mind, withdrawn from the body, is moved by a divine rapture. But if someone foresees future events by human ingenuity rather than by divine inspiration, he thinks that this should be named for foresight or inference. From all this is now clear that there are 4 kinds of divine frenzy: love, poetry, mysteries, and prophecy. That common and completely insane love is a false copy of divine love. Superficial music of poetry, superstition of the mysteries, and prediction of prophecy, according to Plato. Socrates attributes the kind of frenzy to Venus, second to the Muses, third to Dionysius, and the last to Apollo. I have chosen to describe at greater length the frenzy belonging to divine love and poetry for 2 reasons. First, because I know you are strongly moved by both of these, and second, that you will remember that what is written by you comes not from you, but from Jove and the Muses, with whose spirit and divinity you are filled. For this reason, my Pellegrino, you will act justly and rightly if you acknowledge, as I believe you do already, that the author and cause of what is best and greatest is not you, nor indeed any other man, but immortal God. Farewell, and be sure that nothing is dearer to me than you are. 1st of December, 1457. Letter 8. An excuse for prolixity. Marsilio Ficino to the great Cosimo. Greetings. Lorenzo, the priest from Pisa, is expounding for you Solomon's Song of Songs. He has so far written 18 volumes, if I remember all right, to explain one small book. If you are surprised, Cosimo, that Lorenzo wrote so lengthily when Solomon was so brief, I reply that Lorenzo has obliged to be lengthy because Solomon was brief. The more intricate the knot which Solomon tied, the more devices were necessary to unravel it. The distinguished philosopher Niccolo Tignosi of Figlione praises Lorenzo's writings, and I agree with him. Although I usually dislike prolixity, it does not seem to me that the work is too long, since I find hardly anything of importance in theology that has not included within it. But farewell, lest I become prolix myself while excusing. Prolixity. Letter 9. On divination and the divinity of the soul. Marsilio Ficino of Florence to his fellow philosopher Matteo Corsini. Greetings. The father of my mother Alessandra was called Giovanni, and her mother was called Angela. Alessandra was in Figline, Giovanni in the town of Montevarchi, and Angela in Florence. Angela wrote to Giovanni and Alessandra that she was well and would return the following day. They read her letters, and while asleep that night, they both saw Angela at the same time. She appeared to Alessandra in the entrance of the house, and when the daughter was greeting her mother as if she had returned home, the mother avoided her daughter's embrace. "Farewell," she said, "and take care that the priest pray to God for me." And to Giovanni she said, "My Giovanni, how I grieve at your misfortune. Farewell, and ask that prayers be offered to God for me." Suddenly aroused by these visions, they both cried out, thinking her to be dead. They sent to Florence. The news came back that she had departed this life that very night. You may wonder at these things, Corsini, but listen to something equally miraculous. As soon as her son was born, my mother entrusted him to a countrywoman as a wet nurse. 17 days later, while asleep at noon, it seemed to her that she was deeply troubled, and was being comforted by her own mother, long since dead, who said, "Do not grieve, my daughter." On the following day, the country people brought her the news that her son had been suffocated by the nurse. I shall omit how she foresaw in a dream that her husband, Ficino the doctor, would fall from his horse, and where it would happen. I shall also omit many other instances of this kind. For the present it is enough to have told you these stories, which seem to confirm two things in particular. First, that the souls of men, which are almost separated from their bodies because of a temperate disposition and a pure life, may in the abstraction of sleep divine many things, for they are divine by nature, and whenever they return to themselves they realize this divinity. The second thing these stories confirm is that the souls of the dead, freed from the chains of the body, can influence us and care about human affairs. Hesiod sang of this. Our Plato confirmed it in the Laws, and both of these men were known as heroes to all antiquity. Farewell. Letter 10. How to praise without flattering. Marsilio Ficino to Francesco de Castiglione, the theologian. Greetings. I have read your commentaries on the Psalms of Prophet David. I must say, Francesco, that just as God found David a man after his own heart, so David has found you a man after his. But where we suspect an opinion to be flattery, it is better to hint than to explain. Give my greetings to Giorgio Antonio Vespucci, a remarkable man, both for his learning and humanity. Farewell. Letter 11. The usefulness of the solitary life. Marsilio Ficino to the priest Gregorio Epifanio and his fellow philosopher. Greetings. God is unchanging unity, in single stillness. This, as you are aware, is clearly expounded by our Platonists. Therefore, whoever desires to attain God avoids large numbers and movement as much as he can. Let us, therefore, my Gregorio, retire into that one unmoving watchtower of the mind, where, as Plato says, the unseen light will shine unceasingly upon us. Indeed, so that we may then more easily be able to do this without interruption, I have decided to stay for a while on Monte Vecchio, which has been bestowed on me by the great Cosimo, and you shall be there with me. You have heard the proverb, for the good man without his friend, joy in possession soon will end. I know of no companion it would give me more joy to have you there with me at that time than you. Farewell, and fly to me. Letter 12. On modesty in writing. Bessarion, Cardinal of Sabina, to the Platonist Marsilio Ficino. Greetings. Respected and learned friend, in previous letters we promised to send you our work in defense of Plato, which, after burning the midnight oil, has just been published. We do this not only because of your genius and exceptional enthusiasm for the Platonic teaching, but also that you may easily see what we have drawn from that source, and read whether, in this work of ours, any eloquence or knowledge of the liberal arts shines out. If we have succeeded, we readily concede that either we have taken it all from him, or that he himself provided his own defense. It seems also to be greatly to his credit that he has pleased his cause by his own powers and with the magnificence of his own language. He did not need the help of another, but merely allowed room for the voice and zeal of his defender. We have sent you this book by the hand of those who look after the affairs of the Medici here. In sending it, we believe we have satisfied our obligations and promise, as well as your zeal and enthusiasm for Plato. Farewell, and let us know whether you receive the book. 13th of September, 1469, Rome. Letter 13. In praise of those who expound Plato. Marsilio Ficino, the Florentine, to Bessarion, the Greek, Cardinal of Sabina. Greetings. You are well aware, venerable father, that when our Plato discoursed on beauty in the Phaedrus with such insight and at such length, it was beauty of soul he sought from God, which he called wisdom and most precious gold. When this gold was given to Plato by God, it shone in him most brilliantly, because he was so pure in heart. Although this great brilliance is revealed in his works and writings, yet the treasure became enveloped by darkness in the mind, and difficult to see, as if covered with a cloak of earth. It lay hidden from any man who did not have the eyes like a lynx. For this reason some men of narrow learning were once deceived by the outer crust, and, since they could not penetrate to the core, They despised the hidden treasure. But when that gold was put into the workshop first of Plotinus, then of Porphyry, Iamblichus, and eventually Proclus, the earth was removed by the searching test of fire, and the gold so shone that it filled the whole world again with marvelous splendor. But some night owls, it seems, were upset by such bright rays of light, and not only despised the sacred treasure of our Plato, as some had before, but sinfully even began to abuse it, which was more worse than the first error. But Bessarion, the light of the Academy, swiftly applied an effective medicine for these dim and feeble eyes, so that the gold would be not only pure and shining, but malleable for the hands and harmless to the sight. This Plato foretold. He said to King Dionysius that time would come, after many generations, when the mysteries of theology would be purified by penetrating discussion, as gold is purified by fire. This time has come indeed, Bessarion. May the spirit of Plato, we, and his followers rejoice at exceedingly. Farewell.